Welcome to the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Today on the show, we have with us Brandon Laney, who is a full-time truck driver who also invests in real estate using sober living as an exit strategy. How are you doing today, Brandon?
I'm doing awesome, Nathaniel. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. And you know what? Thank you so much for being on the show today.
No, I appreciate you reaching out and us being able to make this happen. It's just awesome. So I appreciate it, and it's an honor to be here.
Well, let's get right started in here. And I just want to have you let the audience know a little bit about yourself. Can you tell us about your story, how you got started in real estate?
Yeah, my journey kind of goes back to 2022. Um, at the time I was I was still am. I worked for a big trucking company, moves packages across the country, and for me and my wife, I was spending a lot of time at work, a lot more time than the average American does. I work 50 to 60 hours a week, and that's normal for our industry, to be able to provide the services that we do. And while it is a great company, and it can be good, it takes away from family. It takes away from um, the core of what I feel like is most important is my family and my boys. And so I started searching for like how can I kind of fix my situation, or how can I kind of cut back in a sense. And so I stumbled upon Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad's book, and that's where my journey began. And I mean, what an amazing book, and a turn pager. But from there, I decided that I wanted to invest in real estate, and I want to become a real estate investor. And um, uh, from there it was just a long journey of buying books. I started out with listening to bigger podcast, and reading their books, and taking in their information, and learning what deals look like, how to value them, and looking at the numbers and that kind of stuff. And they had really great information, and I, took in long distance investing. I actually live in a non landlord friendly state, and I didn't want to invest my money here and take the risks that come along with investing in this particular state. Well, it can be good and bad, and why I love this state. Um, it wasn't a risk that I was willing to take. So I actually bought Robert Greene's or not Robert, yeah. Was it Robert Greene? I think it was
David
Robert
Green?
or David Greene. David
Yep,
Greene's
he's the
long
one that runs
distance.
the podcast for Bigger Pockets, or at least he did for a while.
Yeah, I think he stepped down at this time. I think they're going in a different direction that
Mm.
he wasn't particularly happy with. But David Greene's book, Long Distance Investing Through Bigger Pockets, and that's what gave me the confidence to go. I actually invest in St. Louis, Missouri, and I live in Portland, Oregon. And that's how my journey began. I started researching properties in that area, started learning what that area looks like, and the good and the bad that comes with it, and determined that that's where I wanted to go. And I started out with traditional renting back in near the end of 2022, the start of 2023, somewhere in there. And so I bought a duplex from as my first property, and um, the previous owner had a property management company that they were working with, and they kind of just left everything in place, which I thought worked out in our favor. And everything was moving along, and the person that we were working with, he found us another rental property that was a little bit further it was near a hospital, so we decided to try one more exit strategy other than traditional, and that was short-term renting for traveling nurses, because that was still really big at the time. So then we kind of split resources, and we tried out two different strategies just to see what kind of returns it would bring. And yeah, that's kind of where that journey began, with those two properties, and quickly learned that the short-term rental property did really well and it produced income. But the long-term property is where we had our biggest issues. We had miscommunications or non-communication with property management in the area. We ended up trying to swap property management companies, and we thought things were going to move in the right direction. And they did for a few months, but that property management company got very overwhelmed with new inbound customers that were coming their way, and they didn't have the ability to manage it, and they lacked communication, and that's where things kind of fall apart. And things ended up going really bad with our particular property. It got turned into a drug den. They were selling drugs out of it and doing drugs out of it. They weren't communicating with the tenants, and the tenants weren't communicating with property management about either payment or things that need to be replaced or fixed. Anything like that, it just went out the window. And this is where like I take a lot of the responsibility, because I let it go on for too long. I just assumed, hey, like, this is what we're paying them for. Like, they should be doing these things. And eventually they would kind of get back to us. And I kind of hit this wall. And in the beginning of, let's see, in the beginning of 2023, I was like, you know what? I have to make a change. These properties aren't working out. Well, while one is working out, one is funding the other one with it, like, while issues are popping up, and also covering the property management expense on a quarterly basis, and it wasn't working out. Unfortunately, during that time, as crazy as it sounds, I spent even a little bit more money, and I joined a great community called Sub 2, which is run by Mr. Pace Morby himself. And through that community, I was going through, like, learning what wholesaling looked like, because I'd never learned what wholesale looked like, or fixing flipping, and how to generate leads. And I actually met two individuals, and one of the individuals through there, he actually lives there locally in the St. Louis, Missouri market. Great individual. He's in the construction. He has a wider range of knowledge, but mainly around construction and masonry work. And he can pretty much rebuild a home from the ground up if he had to. And he, having a background of going through sobriety and changing his life around over the course of the last 4 years now, wanted to do something to give back. He used a lot of organizations through his time, but a big one was sober living, and that was something that he wanted to do. And through that, that's how I came to learn about sober living, what sober living looked like, and the structure behind it. And so I said, nothing else seems to be working. Cash flow is not really being generated by this property, and any cash flow that's being generated by the other property is having to be used to cover other expenses. And it was just kind of a drain on energy, resources, time, and also split time between trying to spend time with my family, also still trying to maintain a heavy workload, and also be in contact, because I can't live there. I'm not living there locally, but I'm in contact with people that property management, or I'm in contact with trying to get people out to look at the property that we had up as a short-term living company or short-term living home for traveling nurses because we had stuff pop up there. Not as bad as the other one, but there was multiple facets happening at multiple times. And while I thought, I could take David Green's book and go from book to real life is not the same as what you read in a book. You can do all the market research, you can connect with all the people, you can take their knowledge and their information, but until you start to go through and actually take action and you learn, they're definitely not the same.
Yeah, I experienced that with my first private money loan. It was
Really?
it was successful, right? But there were a lot of things that I'd learned about lending that I hadn't. Well, let's rephrase that. There were things that I hadn't learned about lending that didn't show up until I actually went and did a deal for myself. Things like the fact that there's costs associated with drafting loan documents that are usually taken care of by the borrower. The fact that I have to structure my joint venture agreement in such a way that it respects legal terms and or legal vernacular. Because I used the word ghosting in one of our agreements, and that's not legal vernacular. So they're like, no, that's not something that's going to fly in a court of law. And
Really?
just a few other things like liquidating the funds on my credit card. That there was a cost associated with that. Just things that people don't talk about when they're teaching you what the process looks like.
That's crazy. Because I have actually never gone through that process, and it'd be very interesting, like to see that and to go through that. But at the same time, um, I don't know. I have so much happening. It's okay.
Well,
Uh,
I get that. There's always more stuff to learn and figure out. But if anybody's interested in seeing how my loan was structured, I do have a video about it called, I think it's E&D Lending from the Lender's Perspective on my YouTube channel, if people want to take a look at that when they get a chance. You mentioned sober living and learning how that is structured. Could you go
yeah,
over that a little bit for us so that the audience understands what that exactly looks like?
yeah. So sober living, on a basic level, is offering homes to people who are coming out of incarceration, coming off the street, need a place to stay. It can be short term or long term. The process, is it's a communal home, in a sense. So multiple people living under one home that are all striving for the same goal, and that's sobriety, whether it be from alcohol or whether it be from drugs. Um, and through that process, or within that home or that structure, um, there's a senior house manager, a junior house manager that operate the day to day. There's chore requirements within the home that have to be met. There's curfews that have to be met, to pretty much stay in the home. Through our intake forms, everything's kind of explained, to the individuals that come in the door, and they are made aware that by coming into the home, these requirements have to be met to stay here. There's no stealing, there's no fighting. You know, Organization of food can be a struggle. Definitely learned early on. The more refrigerators you have, the better, and the more cabinet space you can have, the better. Um, but that's the basic structure. There's more on our end, really, that has to be, more steps that have to be taken, because through the process, uh, it, you can accreditate a sober living home. So there's two different styles or two different structures you can have. You can have a pay by the week in a non-accredited home, and you can offer that in some parts of the country. In my particular state, you can't offer a non-accredited, communal sober living home. It has to be an accredited, and it has to be checked by the state before it can be offered to the market. In the state of Missouri, I can, or any individual can buy a home. They can organize the structure within it, and they can market that property to the general market as a sober living home without any form of documentation, if you choose.
Okay.
But
So just some clarifying questions real quick. The sober living, is it coming through like a state program, or is it like a federal thing? It's through the government, right?
yeah, so that's the accredited side. Once you go through there's additional documentation, a whole manual that you have to have in place, outlining everything, top to how you handle tenants, what the structure is, the meeting requirements of those individuals, because they're required to go to one meeting outside of the home, whether it be AA or NA, and then there's a weekly meeting within the home that they're required to be at also. Um, so all of that has to be outlined. Your property has to meet certain conditions. And what the federal government does is they partner with the state, because federal government can't actually have its own structure. So they have to use a third party to disperse funds from. They can't have their own business, so to say,
Gotcha.
which I can delve into, like like why like Lockheed or Boeing has special contracts with the government, or even smaller people can have contracts with the government, because the government can't have a business, but they can disperse funds to a third party that has a business to offer services. So they work with NAR. It's not the National Alliance of Realtors. It's a different acronym that has the same acronym. It's the National Alliance of Housing Real Estate for Recovery, is what it is. And within the state of Missouri, they have an accredited third party that they partner with. And once you meet the guidelines and the requirements, and the insurance is in place, you can have your property accredited, and you go through the process of submitting your documentation. They come out and walk your property, and they give you a certificate if you passed, or they tell you why you didn't pass. And they say, if you fix these things, you let us know, and if they meet the standards, we'll give you your certificate. But yeah, so through that, we've accredited 4 homes so far under our program. We meet the guidelines for these individuals. There's still additional steps behind that. Even when people come in, we have to take their information. We have to take them, or they have to go down to a different facilities that are meet state standards, that fall under these different, like, Department of Mental Health or corrections facility, um, and there's other departments also within it that you can get, that this funding falls under. And you take their information, you get them set up in the program, and then from there, you track, you know, how long they stay in your house, how long they're there for, what nights they're there for, and then every month, you compile that data and you send it off to those facilities, and they double check all to make sure that you're not lying about what happened, and then they write you a check based on the SOR funding that's available at the time. So that funding can fluctuate. Every October, at least in the state of Missouri, those numbers are revised. They can go up or down depending on what funding's available. So there, it's just different metrics. And
Okay. But you're typically making more than you would with LTR as well, though, right? Long-term rentals.
yeah, so our it's based on a daily rate. The daily rate, to be transparent, went from $27 to $41 a night per person. And a typical home under a sober living facility, it's not one person, one bed like it is a pad split. You can have 3 to 4 people in a bedroom, depending on the size. And we don't. It's not like prison style where their bunk beds stack on top of each other. It's more of like one person spread out trying to give more of a home type feel. We do the best that we can to make it feel like more of a culture and a home than it would like a
Like a
prison
bunker.
or a bunker.
Okay.
But yeah, so that funding just got revised this last October, so it just went to, I think it's $41 a day per person. So we have approximately 6 to 8 individuals per home. Granted, you know, there's a lot of turnover, um, depending on how people feel about being in those homes, how the houses are being run. So it can be a lot of work or it cannot be, depending on the culture that you set up and how you're choosing to help these individuals. So there's a lot of work that has to go in behind creating the belief system, like we're here to help. We
Mm-hmm.
want like creating that culture that you guys aren't alone through this process, because if that's like it's easy to fall back than it is to move forward. um and then like if you have that turnover rate, that kind of hurts your ability to generate that cash flow. So it is more of a business than it would be like a traditional, like, hey, I'm gonna go do a background check, I'm just gonna write these guys a 12-month lease and hope and pray that they pay every month. And then through the process, not to denigrate or to sound cruel to anybody, but they are made aware that they are signing away their tenants' rights when they come into our property, so they can be removed for cause also. So we don't have to go through the courts to have them removed. Um, we just go down, or when police officers show up, because we've had issues in the past. Here's their documentation. We made them aware when they came into this property that they were signing away their rights, and we're asking them to leave, because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, there's
And
another investor that I spoke to that said that they did that exact thing when they discovered that one of their tenants had decided to keep a firearm in the home, which it wasn't allowed for their home. I don't know
yes,
if it's the same for yours.
yeah, we have had fights break out over small things. We've had firearms stolen and hidden on property. Um, we've had people steal from one another. And that, man, it's hard because you want to create change and you want to do what you can, but you also have to draw a line, and some
Mm,
people have to be removed, and you also have to keep a strong culture in place and a strong sense of community, among like individuals as a whole, to move them forward. And if you don't have that, it can definitely be a strain. um, with with it can be a strain on your team that's managing it day to day, because they can feel the separation, and the turnover can be hard to deal with and managing. And then also getting house managers, like, they become friends with the people that they're living with, and it can become hard for them to hold other people accountable within that space. So it's a lot of it's a lot of work. It can be a very tenuous and strenuous business, and trying to come up with ways to help help them break past those barriers and see the other side of what their life could be and what the potential that they have within them without um, being on these substances. So it it can be a lot. It can be a lot to handle, a lot to manage. But at the same time, like, we've been able to help quite a few people change their life and go back into normal society, learn how to be a normal and a regular individual, not on substances, rebuild their life, go back into the workforce, because we also help people find jobs, and through that, like, how to manage their money and how to manage their day to day, and then being able to move into their own places and start their own families and grow from there. So it is very rewarding, at least to me in that sense, and being able to make that impact in that community and have that be a part of like my long term impact to uh, to their country. Honestly, I don't think that there's anything better than that. Like it
Hmm.
can be stressful and hard, and there are times where it can get very hard, but it just yeah, I hold on to that. I hold on to the impact that we've been able to make so far, and the long term impact.
I
Because
know,
our
and I think that's amazing. It's great to see that. A little bit about myself, that I was actually assaulted by someone that had schizophrenia. That came home drunk one night to my roommate, and I went through a lot of recovery after that. But I would have loved to see him get the help that he needed, despite the fact that he injured me so grievously. And the unfortunate reality is that you can't help everybody, but you still put the effort in, and you get to help at least some of them, and that really makes a difference.
Yeah, I think, and it's unfortunate that you had to go through that, and hopefully that individual has gotten the help that he needs, or maybe is um on the other side of it. Uh, but yeah, I mean, to me, it's having a greater purpose than it is for myself, um, and the impact that like I can make for just like beyond just having a family in this world, but the impact that I can have on a greater community as a whole, and being able to give back at such a higher level. And it's just, to me, it's just investing with a purpose. It's not just investing for a return and
Yeah,
looking at strictly numbers. It's become a lot, and it gives me enough. It gives me more purpose to move forward, in the sense that like I can do more because I'm doing more for more people than it would be here. I'm serving a family in this home, and then finding the next one, and so on. um and that's not to say that other investors aren't doing enough, or they aren't doing the right thing. I mean, everybody has their space and the thing that they love to do. And the cool thing with real estate is there's so many options available,
oh,
to
definitely.
make an impact. And whether it be on a small scale or on a big scale, I don't mean to take away from anybody else, but you still are doing and creating uh, a big impact for those individuals within Section 8. Traditional renting, travel nursing, or giving an amazing experience to those people that want to travel for Airbnb. You get to see cool parts of the country because somebody took the time to build something awesome that you get to stay in for a week, and you would never had that experience if they didn't take the time to do that. So I think it's awesome, me personally. But this is the journey that I'm on, and um, yeah, I think it's awesome. I love it. Um, but it, like I said, it can be stressful. It can be stressful. I want to stress that it as good as the numbers sound on paper, when it comes to real life, it could be just like your experience with going and retrieving a PML and borrowing money and drafting like not realizing that you had to pay to draft documents and legal terms that had to be in place. Um, it's the same thing. It's like it sounds really good as an idea, and that's where me and my partner Nick Minden, we took it as an idea. Like we knew nothing about sober living, and we took a vision that we both had, and our long-term vision is to help 100 people. And we brought that vision to life, and it's been a long journey, and it's been a lot of investment, um but it's paying off. And it as much as it can be a financial gain, it's also a very, for me, it's a big emotional gain. Because for me, um I grew up a member of the church, and for me, while I may not be as active as I was in the past, I still have always wanted to be able to create impact for the less fortunate. Even um, as a long term thing, like I've and especially living in the state that I live in, we have a lot of individuals here that don't have there's not enough spaces for them. We have a lot of homeless. We have a lot of drug addicted people, and they have no place to go. And there's very little. While the state and there are a lot of like food banks and stuff like that, there's very little in the way of room available. Um, and while our state has transformed because we've had more people move here from other states that have brought a lot more wealth, and it's pushed a lot of people out of what used to be their community. Um, don't have the housing available to them anymore. Um, but while I may not be able to do that here, I can still create that impact elsewhere. And so through both what I grew up with and what I believe, being able to give people a second chance in life, I can create that. I can create that value, and I think it's cool that we live in a day and age where that value can be created, not in a. It doesn't have to just be in your local community. You can have it countrywide, statewide. I mean, you can go globally now. Like, I think that's amazing that we live in a time where that's available to us
Yeah.
as individuals if we choose to have it. Yeah. It, it's all about choice.
Yeah, definitely. It's not as simple as flipping a switch, but if you put in the work, you can accomplish a lot. And I definitely think that that's what you're doing right now is really respectable, helping the people get over their addictions, having a place to be. One of the most important things to change behavior is environment. So you're providing an environment that's conducive to those change, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome we can provide that environment within the city, and being able to have them, you know, close to being able to get to their new job or to their family or because sometimes they may not be able to stay with their family, but they can be close to your family or family members that are close to them. It's not super far out in a suburban area or an urban area where that's not available to them. Um, but it's just amazing to have an avenue where you can both have profits, but those profits will be reinvested to some extent, but also create a huge impact along the way.
In people's
Um,
lives.
and I mean, there's so many different. There, I mean, there's so much still for me to learn to behind the structure and behind what we're doing. Um, and
Well,
there's
let's
so,
go into that a little bit. What do you think the future looks like for you? Where are you aiming at?
well, like I said, our goal is to help 100 individuals. And through that, I still want to continue to grow. I know I've never borrowed private money. I know I've spoken with some private money lenders in the past that have talked about it. So honestly, I don't really know what that structure looks like. I have borrowed hard money, which is very expensive. We did 2 flips last year, and I got to see what that process was look like. What that process looked like. Take a property, and go through, and we just used at the time not at the time we had a 6 month term on both of those loans, so I got to see what that looked like and going through the DSCR process and how DSCR and private mortgages or business mortgages are way different than regular lending for individuals, which can be way
Yeah.
different.
DSCR, that is debt service coverage ratio, which basically just means that they measure it against the income you're going to make off the property, right?
Right, but unfortunately, while it sounds nice, and while we thought that we could prove that our property would generate X amount of income, um, DSCR uses traditional rental rates. And that's
Got
what
it.
they base everything off of. And on
Yeah, I can already see where that might have some issues if you're having multiple people and say like a 3-bedroom home is not going to pan out the same way.
yeah, for them, it's what does this property rent for in the regular long-term rental market? And they look at long-term leases and what those generate, and that's what they use those ratios off of. So we
Okay.
kind of got hit on the back end. Learned our lesson there. We still got through it, and we still made everything work. Um, but it wasn't to the same extent that we thought things were going to look like. And it was a learning lesson, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
all
Expensive education, right?
yeah, it's a very expensive education, to say the least. Um, I and that's that's where I take more accountability in the sense that I under my initial impression was, oh well, if this is how the numbers look, then this is how it should look like when we submit our documents to that lender, and they're like, no, that's not how the system works. And quickly realized that while everything was still going to work and we could still make the numbers work, it was just going to look a little bit differently um, than we had originally thought. Yeah, I'm really trying to work with a couple of, well, in the past, I was working with a couple of, they're like the brokers for the middlemen for these lenders. And I was like, we need to broaden our scope here because you guys are hurting huge a huge market of individuals are not individuals but businesses that are using these services, and the impact that it would have on their financial books would be a lot different than the traditional long term um numbers that they're wanting to base this off of. So I tried to make the argument, and I know Pad Split is trying to make waves in that market
Yeah,
with
the co-living and everything.
yeah, with co-living and the way the numbers should look like, but they're not quite there yet, and
Mm.
they have even more stringent guidelines, like you have to have run this property for 12 months. You have to give us your P&L to prove that you're generating this NOI at the end of the day. And it's just kind of really pushed me to be to look more at commercial type spaces. There was an individual I talked with a few months ago in the Las Vegas market, and they are they converted like I think it was like a 90 unit to a sober living model, but they're still in, so they closed on it, but they have to build the change the structure a little bit to fit the model that they're looking for, and they not only like raised money, but they also worked with the state of Nevada
Mm-hmm.
to be like, okay, this is what we plan to do. This is how would this look like numbers wise. What would you guys be willing to do to like help these individuals? So that was really cool, and it's kind of inspired me to go a lot bigger than it would be to work smaller. And the cool thing is under the commercial space, they look at net operating income as a
Yeah.
whole.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all of these other factors that are factored in under DSCR um, for anything that's 4 units and lower. And when you
Okay.
start,
So just to clarify, if it's
yes,
over 4 units, it's considered commercial, right?
yes, if it's over 4 units, it's considered commercial. If it's under, it's considered a home
Or
and
residential.
or a residential. So it's kind of inspired me to be like, I want to go bigger and I want to see what that would look like. And um, but that's kind of where I've been at, is like how can I make this, what would it look like? And I think having like learning lessons from the past, it definitely need to dive deeper into having more conversations with banks on the commercial side because I've never done commercial lending and
Got
what
it.
that looks like. Also having maybe more inroads with the St. Louis community and people that are partnered with either the state or higher up in the NAR community, as a whole, to be able to be like, this is some, like, I want to bring this huge property to the community, and this is how I want to structure it. Like, what do you think, like, we would have to do to make that happen, and what would that look like if we did something like that? And being able to partner with a portion of the government and the state and the lending institution to do something like that. So that's kind of what I've been thinking, is how to go bigger.
Yeah, expand your impact and help more people.
Expand the impact, simpler lending terms, at least to my knowledge so far. I'm sure that there's still a lot more for me to learn. And that's the cool thing also about this space is you're always learn something all the time.
Oh yeah.
Always learning. Like, once you think you have it, you don't have it. Like, while you think it's just some numbers, and you can multiply out the numbers, and if the numbers work, it's good. What you can do, like with simple residential real estate, there's still a lot. There's still a lot that you can learn and do, and the impact that you can have. And I mean, I'm still learning, like, what a 503(1) would look like, and being able to build out that portion of it and putting it into a trust, and what taxes would look like under something like that. And there's so many different factors. It's so much to learn, and but that's something that I've been thinking about, is how to go bigger, how to create a bigger impact, and how to bring that to reality. So I think that would be really cool to do something like that, on a big scale. I've always wanted to. I really love like commercial development. I have unfortunately not done anything like that, but I think it would be awesome to do. I know a really big thing that's needed in our state, other than, or not in our state, but in our country, is residential assisted living, or assisted living on a large scale for those
Mhm.
individuals going into retirement. As our population continues to age, people are going to need those services too. So I've looked at that too, because I find that very interesting. Like, what does it take to make and bring in enough institutional lending to make something like that happen, on a large scale? So
Well, I'm excited to see what you come up with. I mean, we're going to continue to be in touch with each other since we're both part of the same coaching course.
yeah,
And
I'm so glad I joined the Growth Co. I've learned a lot too.
oh yeah,
What's
it's
been your
been
experience?
illuminating.
Have you loved it so far?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've
Yeah.
been really excited to see some of the mindset shifts that I've been able to go through over the last, what is it, 11 weeks now that we've been in the course, and just making sure that I'm consistent with all the things that I'm doing every day, little habits, as I'm trying to build up this identity that's different than the one that I was living in the past, and seeing if I
Yeah.
can't figure out a way to help people on my own as well. I'm not going towards the sober living side on my part. I'm interested in helping provide affordable housing for veterans and people who are wounded in the line of duty. That's going to include people like police officers, or say firemen that suffer burn injuries as they're rescuing lives, as well as maybe helping people who are trying to overcome the trauma of being victim of human trafficking. And so we'll see what that's going to look like as we flesh it out and go forward. But that's kind of the vision and the goal for our part.
That's gonna be cool. Have you been able to find anybody to partner with, and kind of flesh out that vision, or kind of in talks with, to see what it would look like to make that vision come to light?
Yeah, I've talked to a few people. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm actually in the process of looking to hire an operations manager to help me manage a lot of the day-to-day minutia stuff, communicating with wholesalers and people that are going to be able to bring properties to the fore to consider for purchase, people to talk to raise capital, to kind of bankroll the projects, and then just see where we go from there,
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. The impact you're gonna have and the people you're gonna be able to help through the process, that's gonna be amazing.
Well,
I love
and
it.
it's really close to our heart, mine and my wife's, because her sister passed away when she was 20 years old, and she wanted to be a firefighter. And so it's kind of a nod to Danny too, because she didn't get to go out and live that dream. And it's
You,
interesting the things that
you cut
become
out there. You
important to
said
you.
that she wanted to be
She wanted to be a firefighter.
you. Oh, she wanted to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Well, was she not able to kind of live out that dream? Then it sounds like.
No, because she passed away when she was 20 years old.
Oh, that's
So,
unfortunate.
but
Sorry.
it's just kind of a nod to her. We all want to make a difference in the world, and that puts that particular group of people close to our heart.
That's awesome. The cool thing is you get to carry that with you, and you get to bring that vision to light and make that impact. And while you may not be a firefighter yourself, you still get to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's anything greater than that. Like being able to have an impact, and it's not just for them. Like it's for their families too, because they go through their own traumas. They have their own
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and they need a place that they feel safe to be able to bring that stuff to light and to talk about it, and um to kind of rebuild themselves. I mean, through what they've gone through,
Yeah.
because they have their own experiences and their own traumas that hurt, or help, depending on how they decide to take it. But I mean, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Well, and I
Just
feel like I have some insight into how to handle things like post-traumatic stress syndrome and stuff, because I went through that myself. And maybe I can structure it in such a way that I can give them support in that fashion as well.
I think it's awesome that you can come from it from multiple angles, being able
Yeah.
to offer different services and also what you've gone through from your past and the things that have transpired in your life, because you've been through those things. You've been through the highs and the lows, and I know, if I recall, you had mentioned that you were at a point where you felt like you needed to take your own life, and you had to work through that, and now look at you. Now look at where you're at, and the things that you're learning, the impact that you're gonna have. I mean, it's just amazing to see the
Yeah.
growth impact.
I'm very grateful that I didn't go through that when it was looming in my life, and it felt like the only option. But there's a song that I'd heard. It was the lyrics. I think the Citizen Soldier is the person that sings it, or the group that sings it. But the lyrics were something along the lines of, "What a beautiful truth that a human can become more than just what they feel, because the hell in your head will be nothing compared to the person that it couldn't kill." And I look now at my life and the immense blessing I have with a family that loves me, and how good things are now. And I'm just so grateful that I made the decision to just stick it out. And yeah, I can't even imagine. like,
That's beautiful, Nathaniel. That's amazing.
but, well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. What I always like to do before we end the episode is I like to ask you if you have any recommendations for people who are just getting started, either in entrepreneurship or real estate investing, that like in the form of resources, recommendations for places they could go to learn what they need to get started.
Yeah. Recommendations. I mean, if you're not in a real estate group, definitely join Pace Morby's free creative group. And just start connecting with people. Um, the more information you have before you go into something, and the more understanding you have, the better it is going to be for you. I'm one of those people, at least, not to sidetrack from the question, but just in the sense that, like, I'll read something or I'll learn something, and I'll pretty much just take action on it, and I'll just learn through failing. And sometimes that failing can be pretty harsh, but for some reason, I've learned that as much as failing sucks and it can be painful, you learn a lot through just taking action and failing and moving forward. And while sometimes it can be expensive, I'm willing to take that risk. And if you're not that type of individual, connect with people. Tell them what it is that you would like to learn. I would definitely also um, join. I forget her name. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. She has a uh,
What does she do?
it's a course on underwriting. I'm blanking on her name, but underwriting is the key to the business. Understanding how the numbers work, borrowing money, and the top to bottom. Uh, because ultimately, at the end of the day, you're looking for a deal and you're looking for money, but you have to know what the numbers look like to know how much money you have to bring to each deal. And if you don't have that number, or if you're incorrect on the number, or if you're not as conservative, you could definitely go south on you pretty quick. Um, I apologize
Is
for
her
the
name Kalisha Carter?
I think that's who it is.
Okay. I
I'm
think I know. I just had to look it up real quick. I think you're referring to Kalisha Carter.
yeah. I
And she's
apologize.
part
Yeah,
of the
thank
Sub 2
you.
group.
I was like blanking on her name, but yes, definitely. Just connect with individuals that are in the space. It's definitely going to take you a little bit of time, so don't feel like you're behind um, in not buying a property or not moving forward on something. Um, it's going to take you time to determine what it is that you want to do. Do you want to fix and flip? Do you want to wholesale? Do you want to go into regular traditional rental? I mean, there's so many exit strategies now with traditional rental, short-term living, long-term or mid-term rental, and then doing it both for regular in the free market and also on the insurance side, which is a whole other aspect that would have a topic in and of itself. There's so much to learn within it. Um, but just start taking in knowledge and start connecting with people in the space. And then I personally, I don't feel like I need to join any more communities between Sub 2 and Pace Morbies. And while it's a great space, it's a very large group of people, and it can be a lot. It can be like taking information from a firehouse. But I have loved Jesse Stanton's Growth Co community and the impact that he's having, and how he has broken things down to, like, instead of talking about things at a high level, he's like, this is how you turn on the computer. This is how you type in Google. This is how you search. This is what you search for, because he can take these very complex systems and ideas and break them down into step by steps processes that anybody can do, and you can move forward on, and you can move towards the goals that you're looking to do. Right, and it can be within any of those niches, or it could be with all of those niches as your exit strategy. The cool thing is you don't have to be tied to one if you don't choose to be either. So um, definitely connect with Jesse Stanton. Definitely connect with Nathaniel, Jamie Stone. Um, all those are great individuals. Anybody within those groups is definitely going to have plenty of information and help you get on the right journey and on the path. So
Well, thanks so much for those recommendations. Apart from that, how could people connect with you in case they want to work with you?
yeah, easiest place is Instagram. I think it's Brandon_Laney 162 on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook. Um, either one works, but Instagram's the easiest for me. So I appreciate it, Nathaniel. I appreciate the opportunity and the time that you've given me to come on and talk about my journey and my story. I know it wasn't super elaborate and as in depth as I'm sure people would like, but it's high level or top level, just to kind of condense time and go through it. But I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
No, sure thing. Thank you for being on the show. And don't worry about it not being elaborate or fancy. I think there's a lot of utility and value in being the person that someone can relate with. And so I don't want you to feel like this wasn't worth my time or it wasn't worth the audience's time. I definitely think that you provide a lot of value, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it, and like I said, I appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with me and to sit down and make this happen. I know we've been trying to get at it for the last couple of weeks, but we finally brought it to light, and I love it. I
Yeah, that
appreciate
turned out great.
it.
So,
It did, and it was awesome.
well, I'd like to thank the audience for tuning in. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. You'll have a good day.